Today we're going to be testing 3 new yarns to see how well they perform on the Sentro Knitting Machine. All 3 of these yarns are a number 5 bulky weight yarn, so they are quite a bit chunkier than the ones I have tested before. So we're going to start with the Bernat Softy Baby yarn. Then I am going to move over and I'm going to try the Lion's Pride Wool Spun, also number 5. And today's final test yarn is this one here, find the label for you, which is the Patons Alpaca Blend. So let's find out how they perform on the Sentro Knitting Machine. Just cast on using the Bernat Softy Baby Chunky yarn. So the cast on was the same as I experienced with any other yarn. It does get a little glitchy, but it went on, and so I'm just about to start my first round. I have pulled a bunch of the yarn already. I find that even with the yarn in the tension little tool that they have here, if I don't pull a significant amount of yarn and it's pulling directly from the skein, that it doesn't go through very well and it can tighten up quite a bit. So let's give it a crank and see how well it performs. So far it's gliding fairly smoothly. I am a little bit surprised. I did think that it might be a little bit too chunky to go through, but it is going through pretty smoothly, and I'm not noticing a difference in terms of how the machine is functioning between this number 5 bulky yarn and the number 4 yarns that I have tested before. So I'm going to give it a few more cranks and I'll meet you back in just a few moments to see how well it's going. I didn't make it very far from where I last left off. I am on round 9 and I stopped because I have a little bit of a problem, a little bit of an issue. So it seems as if the yarn, because it's a bit bulky, it just got stuck on one of the needles here that's supposed to come up and then grab a new thread of yarn. But it is a little bit stuck, so I've had to just kind of use my finger and maneuver the yarn around, and I'm just going to keep trying and seeing if I can finish this round without any more snags. Make it very far again. I'm on round 16, and even before starting back up the video feed, I encountered a few more issues that I dealt with, but I wanted to kind of show you what was going on. So I know it's a little bit hard to see. I'm going to try to zoom in as best I can here. So the yarn is catching on the needle. So the needle is supposed to be coming up. I just kind of pulled that one back with my finger, and it's not allowing the needle to come up on its own because of the heavy bulk yarn there on top. So if I pull it down with my finger, then I'm able to keep going. But it has happened quite a few times already, and I'm only on round 16 as of this right now. So my first opinion so far is that it's probably not the best type of yarn that will go through smoothly on the Sentro Knitting Machine. Even the back, which I'll try to get a close-up in a moment of, isn't looking fantastic. It's looking like it is skipping a bunch of stitches, although I don't think it is on the front side. I'm going to try and just go through a few more to make a decent sized tube so that I can show you what it will look like. I'm just zooming in here. Here is another catch where the bulky yarn has caught on the top of the needle and will not allow the needle to rise up, which is what it needs to do in order to catch the next stitch and to move through. So I have been able to manually remove the yarn that is caught, although this one is quite tight on there, and move it down. Okay, but it does leave that big loop now, so it's not tidy looking, and then proceed on. If you can see here on the inside, it's leaving some big loops, not tight, the tension, so that's not coming out very well at all. However, this would be the inside of a hat or the tube that you're creating, so it may not be a big deal in the end. I'm going to keep going and see how we make it. By the time I got to round 23, I had probably gotten the yarn caught on the needles about 10 times in one round, so I decided to just call it quits. Even casting on gave me a little bit of difficulty. It was caught in so many places, so I don't have a very big tube to show you. It's actually quite wide. It's very wide. It did not bounce back very much. It could be because my tube isn't quite long enough to do so. I can't pull on it very much. On the outside, or what would have been the outside of the tube, the stitches aren't too bad there. On the inside of the tube, it's pretty sloppy. There's lots of pulls from probably where it was snagging, and I had to take it off with my finger. Although this is a very soft yarn and it would make a very warm beanie or a very warm scarf, I personally did not have luck with this one on the Sentro 48 knitting machine. Just a little bit too bulky to go through with ease and to create a good smooth finished piece. So unfortunately for me, the Bernat Softy Baby Chunky yarn, the number 5 bulky, is a thumbs down to use with the Sentro knitting machine. I've got out the Lion's Pride Wool Spun bulky yarn number 5. I'm just about to cast on the machine and see how it performs on the Sentro knitting machine. I have cast on the Lion's Pride Wool Spun yarn, and I'm just going to start cranking and seeing how it goes. The cast on process is the same as all the other yarns I've tried. Just have to go slow. It can be a little glitchy, but went on just fine. So I'm just going to keep cranking, and hopefully I'll get a little bit further than I did with the Bernat Softy Baby Chunky yarn and see how this one goes. I'm on round 6 with the Lion's Pride Wool Spun yarn. It's going okay so far. It hasn't got stuck, but there's a lot of clunking, and my Sentro knitting machine is kind of moving around quite a bit, and it's a little stickier, meaning the cranking isn't going as smoothly. The reason why I use my Sentro knitting machine here in my kitchen is because I find that it sticks the best to my granite countertop, because it has these little suction cup feet here, and the other surfaces that I have tried haven't worked as well as this one is working. So that is why I've tried it here, but it is really shaking. I've had to kind of hold one hand on top where I usually use my left hand for the tension. I've had to hold it on top to kind of stop it from wobbling as much, just to kind of steady it as I'm going through. However, there haven't been any snags yet, so we'll keep going and see how it goes. Okay, I've just cast off the Lion's Pride Wool Spun yarn. I made it 19 rounds when I decided to stop because of the clunkiness that was going on and how much it was making the machine move around. So I don't have a very good sample to show you. Here is what the right side would look like of the finished tube, the little bit that I got done, and the inside looks better than when I used the Bernat Softy Baby Chunky there, but it still had just a really hard time going through the machine, so I stopped there. So this is what I ended up with. So again, it is a big tube, but I don't think I have enough here to stretch it as I should to be able to contract the stitches kind of into place. So unfortunately, again, a really nice yarn. I think it would have made a great hat if you're knitting by hand on circular needles or however you prefer to do it, or crochet, but did not work well on the Sentro knitting machine. One more to go. Let's find out how it does. The Patons Alpaca blend yarn is cast on the machine, and I'm just about to give the first crank for round 1. So far I'm finding I spoke too soon. It just bounced off the tensioner here, but I probably didn't have as much pulled as I needed to pull. So I think that was my fault. So let's continue on. I am finding it going through decently smooth. The machine is not jiggling around or shaking like it was with the Lion's Pride Wool Spun yarn. I don't need to have two hands, one cranking and one holding the machine. I'm able to use my left hand to help with the tension, as I do normally when I'm using the machine. So far it's going around well. I'm going to see how many rounds I can get and see if I can finish a tube using this yarn. Well, I've had success. I made it to 80 rounds with the Patons Alpaca blend. It was a little clangy, but not enough turbulence in the shaking that I felt that I needed to use one hand to stabilize and one hand to crank. I just slowed down a little bit and took my time as I was cranking the yarn through the machine. So I'm just gonna cast off and I'll show you the end result of the Patons Alpaca Blend tube with the Sentro Knitting Machine. I've cast off the tube with my preferred cast off method, which is using my needle and picking up the stitches with the yarn. And I've given the tube a few good stretches here to try to get the stitches to bounce back, and it looks pretty good. So it does need a bit more stretching and pulling here. It's a little messy in a couple spots. Actually right here I find that it's a little bit loose. That might have been a spot that it caught on when I was working it there. But overall, oh, and I just see one more here. So almost there, that would have been the beginning there. There's a catch there. Hopefully I can work that in. But overall, it did a pretty good job. This will be a very warm beanie once I get it finished off, and it did a good job. Not as smooth going through as the number 4 weight yarns, but it still went through okay. I'm a little concerned about how much wear and tear this would have on the machine if I use this weight of wool constantly going through. But I think for the odd one, and if you take your time cranking, it should be okay. At least I had good results. I'm going to finish this off and I will come back and give my final review. So I am done testing the 3 yarns for today's video, and I, just to review, tested the Bernat Softy Baby Chunky. Not successful. That one was a Sentro Knitting Machine failure for me. Great yarn, it feels so soft and silky, but it just didn't go through the machine very well. Just too heavy to go through, but I will definitely still use this yarn with my hand knitting needles to create a nice soft hat. The second one was also a Sentro Knitting Machine failure, and that was using the Lion's Pride Wool Spun number 5 yarn. Not as soft and as silky as the Bernat Softy Baby, but it still would have made a really nice beanie. But again, too clunky to go through, too much vibration and movement, and it just kept getting, just wasn't going through well. So I cast off and stopped that one. I did have success with the Patons Alpaca Blend number 5. So I successfully finished the beanie. I put it together. I still have the yarn on top here because I wasn't sure what kind of palm I wanted to put. But this one, I should technically have 2 strands of yarn at the top for how I finish off my beanies. But when I was pulling to knot, one of the strands broke off. And that's actually the first time that I have had some yarn break off when I am tying the knot. So probably just a word of caution to just be careful if you decide to use this brand of yarn when making a beanie with the Sentro Knitting Machine. It turned out pretty well. It will be warm and cozy. I do still have a couple of looser stitches. You can see right there, they look like 2 little. Thank you for joining me again on my yarn testing video series with the Sentro Knitting Machine. My name's Diane from @handmade@HennyD. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok under @handmade@HennyD, as well as Facebook. I hope to see you again soon. I will be making another video series testing out a few more yarns coming shortly. Thanks and have a wonderful day.